Good evening, everybody. Tonight is the third lecture in a series of the Graduate Design Adjacencies Lecture Series, organized by Theo. Tonight we have Bruce Steele from Glassworks. Bruce was born in Geelong, Australia, where he lived until the age of 15, when his family moved to the Isle of Skye in Scotland. Yeah, we've got lots of information on you. He's been previously employed as a salesman, a sound and lighting engineer, a DJ, a graphic designer, keyboard player, programmer, quiz show inventor, whatever that is. That's right. A technical advisor, computer programmer, and 3D animator. And he's currently director of visual effects and head of special projects for Glassworks Limited in London. Glassworks has a reputation as one of the top post-production and computer graphics companies in London, and they've won numerous awards for innovation and technical excellence in both commercials and pop promos. Over the last 4 years, Glassworks' Special Projects division has taken on some of the most unusual and challenging projects, from a 360-degree digital cinema for Volkswagen to a Formula One virtual reality racing simulator for Orange Arrows. What these and other projects that we'll see today have in common is their use of real-time systems to deliver graphic content as a fusion of the so-called virtual into the actual, or rather the augmented as an environment. Join me please in welcoming Bruce Steele from Glassworks.
Thank you. I'm actually 104 years old, as you can tell from the list of all the job experience. Actually, what I've just done in my life is mess around with things that I've found interesting. And computers were one of those. I was a musician at the time and just got into computers when they were very, very... before they had disk drives, put it that way. That's how long ago it was. An Acorn Atom massively expanded to 12K of memory. My watch has more memory now, let alone the other things that are going to go off and beep in my pockets. Now for my sins, I make up my own job title. So that's why it sounds so impressive. But my boss, Hector, who I've worked with for about 10 years in various companies, both here and in New York and back here again, said make up whatever title you like. So I thought Director of Visual Effects sounded a bloody good title. So. But if you can think of a better one, let me know. Because anyway, what we're going to do is show you the Glassworks showreel first, and then I'm just going to talk about some of the toys that we've been playing with over the last couple of years. Just before we fire up the showreel, I should explain that you will recognize snippets of this from various commercials, unless you don't watch TV at all. And we do mainly commercials and pop videos, but the stuff that we do outside of that is what I've been playing with recently, and that's a lot of real-time stuff. And a few other interesting projects that are non-real time. But so let's play the show reel and see where we go from there. So this is get ready for a PowerPoint presentation here. Not. I hate PowerPoint presentations. I'm just going to talk while this screen is rolling. That's the worst thing in the world. This is anti-PowerPoint presentation. When you see black, if you could pause the tape. Thank you. That's about there. Right, we could have the lights back on. Probably I could work out how to do it from this. I used to have my pilot's license, but I can't really fly this one. Anyway, so that's a quick snippet of what we do on our day job, if you like. And well, obviously none of that is actually created in real time, what we're here to talk about. So, but nevertheless, the same techniques are used to create all this sort of stuff, and what you'll find is it's the same same techniques are used in CAD/CAM, same techniques are used in this and real time and everything else. It's just a matter of how much you can get done per frame given the equipment. And if you can't do it this year, wait 6 months, the graphics card will get twice as fast. Wait 18 months, the computer will get twice as fast. So really, the stuff that can't be done now will be able to be done within 5 years, let's say, in real time. The sort of things that you see there, like little furry animals, are quite difficult to render because basically every hair can cast a shadow, and it can cast a shadow on itself and every other hair on. That's an n-squared problem, and so it's quite a tough little problem to solve. But it's not quite there in real time. But I would guess within a couple of years probably will be there in real time. Maybe somebody's done it in real time. I don't know. Anyway, so we could play the tape again. No, actually, swap the other tape in, and I'll tell you about the first project we did. Up until somebody walked through the door and said, "Could you do this?" Actually, that's how I got into writing video games for TV quiz shows, or inventing quiz shows as well. Somebody came through the door and said, "Do you know anyone who could write a TV quiz show?" And I said, "Yeah." I lied. But I did that for several years. So somebody came in one day and said, we want to project a 360 degree, we want to make a cinema that projects 360 degrees film by 220. So it's a 220 degree. Imagine a complete sphere, and you chop it just below the center line. And you're all architects, you should understand what 220 degrees is. So that's the top half of the screen. I'll show you in a minute. But if you could play that tape, it'd be great. And somebody came in and said, "Could you do this?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And then figure out how to do it, because otherwise you never get a chance to do any of the cool things. So you always got to say yes first. Well, the worst thing you can do is fail, isn't it? And so anyway, this was the dome. I've got a pointer here somewhere. This is a sphere 16 meters in diameter. The outside is 20 meters in diameter. Here's the seating. That's what the building looks like. It cost, I don't know, 20-something million euros or something to build. This is in Wolfsburg in Germany, and this is the inside of it. You go in up this ramp. The whole thing floats above a glass floor and suspended by the ramps. So it's quite a bit of engineering. This is the top. This is the screen that's projected on. God, this video goes fast. That's us with a half-size dome in London, and there's the pictures that get in 2D that get projected back into the dome. Here's how it works. God, we got through to here quickly. 4 projectors on a 220-degree sphere, or the top half, top 220, from there to there, 360 around that way. So here's the opening sequence of the first film that we did. You're looking, as the audience would see, of one thing. Obviously, I can't give you a dome here, but this surrounds you, so the fish swim around you. These caustics and stuff were created in the computer, as all computer generated, as were the flocking algorithms for the fish and stuff like this. And the cool thing was to have this guy's about 20 foot in diameter or something. When he comes in, makes you feel very small. Here's how it works. We got Arate's water algorithms, which render nice ripples on water, used by Fifth Element and God knows what. Did a few 2D things. It's just radial blurring out and make it look like it's underwater, basically. And a bit of it's done in shake, I think. And then we get we key some fish and stuff on top of this. This is a flat 2D picture, so I've just shrunk that down there. So this is the fish going around. You can imagine when this is blowing up into 3D, it doesn't quite look like that. It swims around you rather than around the circle. It is difficult to imagine. But so what in a second is this will pop up into a sphere, and you can kind of see the transformation that goes from 2D to 3D space, which of course as architects you'll know is impossible to get to. So we take that flat thing and we unwrap it to a 220-degree picture. We unwrap it in such a way that the original distortions for when it was shot disappear, so that what we can end up with is this. And we're looking from one side of the dome, so the fish swim round again, you know. the whole trick is to project back in the same, using exactly the same distortions as you shot it on. Now, the interesting thing about this project for me was I had never dealt with projection stuff before, and also we had to play back all of this in real time. So here's how the fish works, by the way. We'll just digress off a little bit. We've got a little texture map of a fish, stick him on a few polygons, wobble him backwards and forwards. Then you write a bit of code, or our R&D department do, to have, this is a flocking. You can see these lines. I've actually got splines in space. NURB splines, for those of you who are mathematical. And you can see that controls it. If I relax the parameters, they're still following the same splines, but you can't really tell where they are. A flocking algorithm basically is two parameters counteracting each other. A gentle attraction from a distance and force that pushes things away when they come very close. So could we pause the tape there and rewind it a little bit, actually? This is, just rewind it back to there. This is great, yeah. Now, we were standing here talking about giant zooms and things, and you saw a little snippet of a couple of those. There was a guy reading a paper, and you zoomed right up into the air for Chicago Tribune on the show reel earlier. And there was also the BBC job where you had a bullet hole and you had a woman, and you just pulled back and back and back and back with these things. It's a trick, and here's how the trick works. But please set the clock. Okay, here's how the trick works. This is what we wanted to create, a giant pull down from a basilica that actually exists in Prague, and we were there. And of course you can't get the crane in there, and the crane would be in the shot, and lights would be in the shot. So this is how all of these giant pullbacks work. A series of nested photographs. So you take the picture from the same place with different lenses. So this one's taken with a telephoto lens. It's a little bit wider, and you'll see what happens is the squares never get too big. As the big ones come in, they shrink down, so that you can continually keep zooming in on something. This is the center bit. It blends into the next bit, and it blends into the next bit. You can see the little cracks in the ceiling there. We couldn't zoom in here. There isn't any cracks in the ceiling there. But if you do this with a fisheye lens and then project it back, you of course end up with an impossible camera, impossible lens, a lens that zooms to from 60 to 220 degrees, and yet there's no crane inside. Also, we can zoom in on this, and there's a lot of detail there because we've built this up from a series of pictures. These were 4K by 4K. But we can change projection, so this is taking a Mercator projection and unwrapping that to a Mercator projection. The interesting thing about that is all the windows come vertical. Sorry, can you just rewind again a little bit? Because just because you're architects and stuff, I thought you might be interested in the projections. So if we roll forward from here, I digress, you'll have to stop me in a second. Let's pause there. Now, this is the same fisheye picture. The center of the picture was here, and the center of the picture has been unwrapped all the way along the top. For those who are not architects or not familiar with Mercator or cylindrical projections, it's the map of the world, where the North Pole's all the way along the top. And what happens is all these windows go vertical. Can you see this? It was very difficult in the fisheye picture because all of these were radial. Can we rewind back again a little bit from there? A little bit further. That's it. Stop and play, and then freeze on the there. See, this angle here is different. I couldn't cut out a window pane here and move it over there, or it'd be very awkward. So when we do this, I can use a different projection. Actually, you know, Photoshop does this for you. I think it's called sphericize or something. And it'll unwrap it so long as your original source picture is square, and it'll go back to square. So it makes all the verticals vertical. Sometimes tricks like that can just allow you to do things that you can't do otherwise. So here it is one more time. In the actual dome, this is all the way around you. So, you know, you couldn't have shot it really, because the crane would have to be invisible, the lights would have to be invisible. What we did is shoot all the bits separately with a light and move the lights around. Here's another one. This is Prague, shot as a time-lapse photography. And speed it up, obviously. It's shot frame by frame. This is the sky. It's been wrapped around. It's actually super Prague. We put a few extra bridges in. And we use a few churches to join the gaps and things. We cheat all the time, and then never believe anything you see. You know that American tape that they showed at the UN? I could have done better than that in the morning. You know, I can't believe how crap those guys are at producing evidence. They come to me, they would have had one. Anyway, here's another version of this. This is the sphere. You've got another sphere nested inside of it, more of a gap at the top than the bottom. These projectors are with about the size of a photon torpedo, for those of you who project 4 times our front silvered mirrors into into the dome. The pictures have got a soft fall off on the edge, so they blend together perfectly, and you can't see where the joins are. That's when the projectors are working properly. So there's the 4 projectors, there's the front silvered mirror, and this is the second series we did. So this was the opposite of one of the effects we saw before. This is now how to zoom into Rome, but it's the same trick again, except it's movie footage. So this is how it opens, but imagine instead of you seeing this, it's filling your complete view, it's above your head. The world falls on your head. You really feel like getting out of the way, believe me. And we have to accelerate quite rapidly because we didn't have very many texture maps towards the end. That's the truth of the matter. They were supposed to supply a few more satellite photographs. But anyway, of course you put some sound effects in there. I'll try and do them for you now. Hang on a second. I don't have enough breath. There you go. See, much better with sound effects. Anyway, so we got a helicopter we shot over the top of Rome, and all the rest of it is just a series of pictures that are nested on top of one another, and maybe you can see them as you go in. That's just a texture maps from NASA. These are some star maps I got from JPL. Don't tell them. And these, you just zoom in, and the last bit in the middle is actually a movie instead of a still. So how to do 6 impossible things before breakfast. This lecture should have been called, but we're digressing off the real-time side, so let's get back to that. We could probably pause the tape there for a moment. So the real-time side of that was in order to create a digital cinema. Each one of those, if you go to Leicester Square and you go and you saw Star Trek in Leicester Square, the last Star Trek, it was projected digitally. That's one digital cinema projector and one qubits machine. The qubits machine is quite interesting. It doesn't store stuff as MPEG or JPEG, which look like crap, to be honest. That's a technical explanation, but it looks like crap because it technically is crap, and we're watching crap television now, and as you know, when BBC 4 breaks up and all the rest of it, if you're like me. Anyway, I'll get back to that. This disc recorder can play back up to 4,000 by 4,000 pixels in real time. And the way it does it is with wavelet compression, which is a mathematical trick using kind of Fourier transforms and all those complicated areas of things. Basically, you buy a thing called wavelet compression and you shove it in, and out come the pictures at the other end, and you do the reverse and it comes back again. So but it costs 50,000 quid for one of these toys. So fortunately, somebody else buys me all these things to play with it. The projector itself, if you don't, for those who are not familiar with a photon torpedo, it's about this wide, about that high, and about the size of a coffin really, and that's the size of the projectors. They cost 100 grand, and they project about the same as an 8,000 watt lamp. So your average light bulb at home is about 60 watts, maybe 100 watts. These spots are probably 100 or 200 watts. So to give you some idea, it's very bright. Actually, the brightness is not really what's important in cinema projection or in any sort of projection, but the contrast ratio, the difference between the darkest and the lightest side. So you have a few complications with that. Projecting on one side of the dome causes light to be reflected. Can you see this light's only being projected onto this screen, but it's reflecting up here. It's also known as radiosity. And bounced light's very important in computer graphics. We never used to be able to model this, and now we can, which is pretty cool, but you can't do it in real time. You have to pre-compute it for real time. But for non-real time things, of course, I'm sure you're familiar now that you can actually compute this, and you can also get the maths for how this light and this particular reflector and everything else works, and you can put that into the scene, light it, and get back exactly the same results as you would in reality, one hopes. Well, at least approximate enough to see where the dark corners are in your design. Right, we could play the tape now. I think we've got some... So that was the first project that we did, and it's real time in the sense that it gets played back, but it's also quite interesting in the geometry of the building's interesting, and pre-distorting. Each projector, of course, would ideally, you'd have a projector in the center, but you can't do that. So if it's off to one side, you have to pre-distort the picture so that when you project it, it does come back... I actually swapped the tapes, that's why I've got lots of black on the end of that tape. We'll be here all night. Forgot which tape we were on there for a minute. And so it was quite an interesting project from the point of view of actually shooting on a 220-degree lens and putting this stuff back together. Some of it we did in 3D, totally generated those scenes, like the fish and other things were shot.
And this is
another
profiling
3D project is this thing. If you've ever watched BBC 4, you'll see this every time the commercial break, it's not really a commercial break, but every time the announcer comes on and says, "Hello, this is BBC 4, welcome to the two people that are watching." This thing reacts. It breaks down the frequencies of the music and the announcer's voice using a fast Fourier transform in real time, generates this graphics in real time, and the whole thing takes 25th of a second to generate. And it was designed by some guys from Lambie-Nen, and instigated by our programmers. And so it's a truly interactive thing. I think we've shot ourselves in the foot. They're never going to buy anything off us again. They've got a box which creates graphics for free. I can't believe that we did this. It's crazy. Anyway, we will eventually get round maybe to doing something with this. It's a bit like a kind of sophisticated version of iTunes, if you like.
And this is BBC 4 profiling France's campaigner.
You know, with anti-aliasing, which is no jaggies for those less technical people. Anyway, this was then the next. That was a little project we did. It took about 6 months. It was a real-time thing, and the box sits there and generates graphics in real time. This, however, was last year's special project, which was kind of fun. Well, we finished it for the start of last year. So for Orange Arrows, it's a 3-seater. They actually built a 3-seater car that goes at 80% of race speed, which is just under 300 kilometers per hour. This is something that we designed and built, or somebody else built the actual car, called Bell Racing, but this is it on a stand in, I think, Spain or somewhere. And the Orange Arrows wanted a ride. What they said, their competitors, they came in and they said, look, our competitors have a PlayStation game on a flat screen in a racing car. Can you do something better? And I sold them virtual reality. I'd never done it before, but I thought it'd be fun. So these are helmets, virtual reality helmets. The top of the helmet has a little black box on there. Oh, this is what we shot. We shot it with that 220 lens again, back to the 220. From one side of here to the other is 180 degrees roughly. And every frame here is shot on a Nikon D1X camera. The reason the clouds move so fast is because actually it took 1.7 seconds or 1.6 seconds to get to the next frame. So we have the slowest lap of Magna-Core racetrack at 1.5 hours for a lap. Michael Schumacher has the fastest. He hasn't called me yet. Anyway, so this is these goggles, stereo goggles. They show in each eye 40 degrees by 30 degrees field of view, roughly, and we generate 800 by 600 pixels for each eye. So we generate 2 pictures, one for each eye, which gives you stereo, and that's 40 full frames a second, and it pulls in those texture maps, which are originally 3K by 2K textures. And so what you're looking at is a virtual dome. Imagine a virtual dome that you're looking in with this thing projected on. And when these guys turn their heads, they're looking around. They'll if you turn your head to the right, you'll see what you would have seen to the right, etc. So it's a very interesting area. This is totally immersed 3D as opposed to augmented reality or shutter glasses, which are used in the cave. Some of you may have heard of that. But the techniques are still the same. You generate a picture for each eye, and somehow you get one eye to see one picture and one eye to see the other. Those of you who've been to IMAX stereo will be familiar with the shutter glasses. All they do is they have polarizers over each eye, and liquid crystal displays that flicker it off and on, so that you see, you basically cover one eye and then you cover the other eye, and they change the picture on the screen. Actually, they only cover about 70%, so a little bit leaks through, so everybody gets a bloody headache. So these guys look kind of funny steering here. Jos Verstappen, we took his data from the hot lap, and actually they don't have an accelerator or brake on this thing because we just wanted to get them through. All Orange are interested in doing is getting your telephone number and name. All these people were doing is sitting in a racing car. That's all they didn't care whether they had virtual reality, not really. But it was quite interesting. The real trick is this little box on top, which inside of there is a little thing called a head tracker, and it uses nanotechnology, which is actually microelectronic machines. and that is what's used to set off airbags in the car and stuff like that. And there are actually a tiny little beam balance, very, very, very small beam balance. And when you move this thing, you can tell where it's being moved. It's inertia. And it anticipates where it is going to be by the time it's finished the calculation. So you don't get lag when you turn your head. And that's important because most of virtual reality you'll try sucks. And the reason it sucks is because, sorry, it's a technical explanation thing. The reason it sucks is because there's a lag. You turn your head and then the picture follows. That's like being drunk. Or stoned, but perhaps not so pleasant. And anyway, so you don't want that. Because you'll have people throwing up in a helmet and the next guy's got to deal with that. Anyway, so that's one of the problems with virtual reality. The other thing is wraparound glasses. I mean, these cost about £1,000 and they break down from time to time. If you want the ones that give you full wraparound vision, like 60 degrees field of view, which would be very nice, they're 70,000 quid each, and they're a very delicate piece of kit, and you wouldn't want one of these guys touching them up, believe me. So, anyway, this is what it looks like. This is me having a go on it. It's a bit offset to one side, but this is just a recording of me driving round the racetrack. So, we're at the start-finish line. I'm looking left and right. Off we go. Every frame you see is changing. Actually, we're only looking at 25 frames a second, but you see 40 when you're doing it. So if I look to the right around this corner, anticipating the corner, you can steer all over the road because I figured out a way of projecting back the reality in such a way that you could steer all over the road. That's the trick, I suppose, to this thing. So you're seeing this, but you're seeing it in stereo. The car's in stereo. You'll see reflections on the car and stuff like that. You also get the audio in stereo. You get... when you brake, your head goes forward slightly, and it comes back when you accelerate and stuff like that. Little subtleties just to give you a feel of it. But in general, it just takes you for a drive around Magny-Cours racetrack. This is the first lap round. I didn't do very much. I just stayed up more or less on the racing line. The fun part for me was I owned Magny-Cours racetrack for 3 days. Don't tell the hire car company. It was a nice Mercedes S-Class, and I would have preferred a sports car. So this time around, I'm going to move around a bit more and look around a bit more. You can, as we come up to this corner, you can see underneath things and stuff like that. Because imagine that we're looking at a small section of the dome. So now I'm going to steer all over the road. So we'll steer over to the left here and to the right. We can actually steer right off one side of the white line. The trick is based on image-based rendering techniques, which is to project back into a rough approximation of the geometry of the track. You can look underneath stuff as you go under, and so it's all pretty dramatic. But this was apart from anything else, was quite fun. But it only took one programmer 6 months, and well, we had to go and shoot the track and do various things like that. But this is us coming in the pit lane. It was pouring of rain. It rained for 3 days. We very nearly didn't get the thing. And then finally, we had 1.5 hours. It took us to do it, and we had a 1 hour, 40-minute slot before it rained again. So we were extremely lucky to get this thing at all. Okay, so you could pause that, or stop it actually. I think we're done on that. So real time, I'm just going to go back, and because we've looked at lots of pictures, and talk about various bits and pieces of this. The interesting thing for real time for me is that, as I said, if it doesn't, if you can't do it today, wait a little while. You'll be able to do it very soon. So the sort of thing that we're seeing in real time now on the games, and the games people are the thing that's pushed this forward. I did a lecture for the Virtual Reality Society, and they've got Onyx computers and caves and things like this, and it's all about 10 years out of date, because the latest stuff is actually the latest game, which is Castle Wolfenstein, or stuff like this, which is a 3D environment with multiple players immersed over phone lines linked together. That is virtual reality. And so while the kind of virtual reality people have been buying £500,000 computers and saying that you need all these fantastic things, meanwhile the games people have just gone ahead and done it. And what they've got is OpenGL running this stuff. They've got reflections running. They've got liquids. I mean, look at the games technology. It is really impressive. So all you have to do is render that in stereo, and you have a multi-environment, a multi-environment virtual reality system. So I think that we're going to see more of this. There may be problems technically with the glasses and things. There's some interesting. Well, I think it's exciting technology, but most people I talk to go, what? That's a terrible ringtone. You've got to get a better ringtone. I can demonstrate a better ringtone. You heard my ringtone. It's much better. Anyway, the thing is that it's moved forward a long way, and the stuff that we're seeing now that's able to be rendered in OpenGL was stuff that when I started doing computer graphics, like Smarties commercials and stuff 10 years ago, was impossible to do, and it took 20 minutes a frame to do. Now it does it in real time, and it will continue to move forward and do that. The fundamental problems are viewing this, and glasses and things aside, the latest idea, as I say, that I heard was there's a company that's got some lasers that are going to scan it straight onto your retina at about 3K by 2K. Because I quite fancy that idea, but a lot of people seem to be put off by that. And what you want is a little pair of wraparound sunglasses, a couple of lasers with moving mirrors at the side, and reflect the beam straight into your eyes, and then you don't have to worry about looking at a screen or I mean, it's only light after all. Anyway, so there's companies that are working on this, but they're a little way off yet, and they still cost a lot of money, and the thing will be the size of this room, but pretty soon they'll look like a cool pair of shades or something. You'll put it on. You've still got some other problems. I mean, virtual reality is actually a lot easier to do than augmented reality. For those who don't know, virtual reality or immersed virtual reality is what we were looking at there, where the people can't see outside. But if you have a pair of transparent glasses on and you superimpose something in front of the people, then that's augmented reality. The problem is that now your head tracking and your position tracking better be bloody accurate, because if your brain is very, very good at seeing one thing move against another. And if I move my head and the objects didn't move with the environment, or stay still with the environment, then it would be again the seasickness effect. So the augmented reality stuff, while it's really exciting, imagine that you could, for architecture, imagine you could go to a building site, put on a pair of glasses and see all the foundations being built up, everything being built up, see where, you can imagine what you could do with this. You could walk around and compare what was in the original design to what's actually being built, and see where the builders cut corners, etc. But there's endless. Of course, it all came from science fiction. So, if anybody read William Gibson's Virtual Light, it talks about augmented reality and virtual reality ideas in there. So people tend to, things come in science fiction, and then a bit later on, the guys think, well, that'd be cool, I actually went around that terrible Star Trek exhibition, as I was misinformed that it might be interesting, and I noticed that these phones are much cooler than the old Star Trek things. I mean, although they came from the same idea, I'm sure the reason these phones open up is because the guy designed them was originally a Star Trek fan. It's amazing how much filters down. So I guess I don't know how much longer you want me to nat. I can nat forever, but yeah, right. The thing is, I'll waffle on about a few things, and then we'll do a few questions and whatnot, because I might be talking to audience who's completely not interested in what I'm saying, so go and ask something completely different. But I think that the most interesting thing, and I'm trying to keep it in context with what you do here a little bit as well, is that the sort of stuff when I first started, we were rendering things with Phong shading. Now, Phong was a bloke who invented cosine fall-off for highlights. And it works like this, that according to computer graphics, all objects are matte, and if you want a shiny one, you put a little highlight on it. That's not quite the way the world works, but that was the first approximation of computer graphics. So, it actually works. If you get a coffee cup or something with a highlight around the rim, just one or two highlights on it, and close one eye, put your thumb over the highlight, the damn thing looks matte. It's quite amazing. You get away with it. So, but it's not really what happens in reality. Of course, what happens in reality is we have billions and billions and billions and billions of photons flying around, and they all fly around everywhere, and some come to the eye. Well, that's a little bit expensive for computer graphics, even for fast processors. So what we do is we do it the other way. which is actually what they used to think in the 16th or 17th century, that sight emanated from your eye till it hit the object. Now, you may laugh, but quantum physics says that's exactly what's happening now. Because quantum physics says that, well, at least Feynman, says that the wave function goes backwards and forwards in time. So a wave function emanates from your eye, another one comes back, and then the photon's sent. So they weren't so far out after all. Mind you, they keep doing the same thing with food. They keep telling you butter's bad for you. Eat this crap margarine shit, and then about 10 years later they go, actually, yeah, we got it wrong. That margarine's really bad for you, and actually butter's not so bad. But I knew that anyway, because it tastes better. Anyway, so I digressed somewhere along the line, didn't I? So we're back to architecture and stuff. The sort of light that you see bouncing around here couldn't be done before. Now it can, and it's really interesting because we can build rooms and we can fire off the light and let it bounce around the room and do a thing called final gathering and work out where all I mean, statistically, we don't fire around every photon, but maybe we divide up that screen into, I don't know, 100 by 100 squares, and then we just look at where the corner of each square, what the values were, and you interpolate the rest. So it's a much better model than what we had before, which was originally, a kind of a matte model with a highlight stuck on top, which is not really how things work anyway, and then a reflection stuck on top of that, and it's just kind of really poor man's way of doing computer graphics. But so we will get to the point where all that radiosity stuff, the stuff that you're seeing here that's happening for free, as it were, you'll be able to model in the computer in real time, which will be very cool because you'll be able to see what something will actually look like and light it properly. The interesting thing for us is everybody says we're looking at realistic computer graphics, or it's not really what everybody's chasing. Super realism isn't what you're chasing, actually. What you're chasing is photography. You don't have grain in your eyes. You don't have lens flares. You don't have a depth of field like you see in computer graphics and stuff. Actually, all of these things come from photography. What we're always trying to do is make computer graphics look like photography. And it's quite an interesting thing to look at the artifacts of photography. And I don't mean digital photography, I mean film, because people happen to like the way film burns out, they happen to like the way film looks, the fact that because the shutter's open for maybe, I don't know, 50th of a second or something, then that you get a blur, like Chris Cunningham's orange video that we did recently with for these cameras, with all the blurry stuff. That was really quite interesting to do too. We can talk about that too if you want to. It's a completely different technique. But I just think that we've got a very exciting time ahead, and we've come to the point with computer graphics where it's going to start to become a useful tool for people who are not computer graphics people. And until now, in order to do that, you kind of had to delve quite deeply into computer graphics and learn the language of that. I mean, I'm waiting for the day when the computer understands me. I don't want to have to tell the damn computer what to do all the time. I've had to learn computer languages all my life. If this computer's so smart, why doesn't it learn how to speak English? I'll tell you why, because English is a pretty abstract language, and sooner or later you'll get it wrong, and or the computer will get it wrong. Voice-operated computers sound like a really good idea until you say, please definitely don't delete the hard disk, and it misses the word don't out. And so there's stuff that somebody asked me, when will computers have emotions, the other day at something, and I thought, that's the last thing I bloody need. My computer's already gives me a hard enough time. I really don't want it going, I just don't feel like it this afternoon, really. Mind you, they probably had a good point. So, I don't think I've got any more tapes to show you, so I think we could perhaps open it up for some questions if anybody's got any questions. Okay, I can point lasers at you. Close your eyes when I fire it at you. Ladies first, yeah. Stand up and speak up.
Orange or something.
Yep.
And probably you've done it.
Yeah, Chris Cunningham directed it. We did it, yeah.
And it's basically capturing a still moment, like a moment,
Yeah.
like a bullet shooting, and you can see it like almost turn around this one single moment.
Yeah.
And it's intriguing me. How do you do it?
It's called. Well, there's actually an example on the other tape. If you rewind the tape that's in the machine at the moment and go back to the show reel, make it mute and then play it through, and I'll shout stop when we get to the point that's there. We did. This is a commercial that's done some time ago as well. We've done quite a few commercials that use this technique, but Chris pushed it further. Chris Cunningham, by the way, is the guy who did the robots thing in there. He did the Madonna video. We do a lot of stuff with Chris, and he actually, basically has an office at Glassworks when he wants. We let Chris come and go. He's a very talented man, and we're happy to work with him. There's a lot of other people come in and want things for free, but it ain't going to happen unless you're Chris Cunningham, I'm afraid. The thing about this is, it's a series of still photographs.
From his childhood,
Now, right back at the start, actually, it's the actual show reel before this. Yeah. It's called Time Slice, and it's. There's several different techniques, but basically it's the same thing as used for the bullet sequence in The Matrix. Funnily enough, the guy who did the bullet sequence in The Matrix, or one of the guys who did the bullet sequence, is called Nick Brooks, and he's working with us on a thing called Dreamkeeper. He also recently did Blade 2, all the effects on Blade 2, and he did a movie called What Dreams May Come, which was an awful movie but fantastic effects. And we're doing a very similar thing with particle systems in 3D and stuff. Now, the time slice thing is just a series of still cameras. And what you do is, we can go through this show reel and talk about stuff too, but basically, it'll carry on here and I'll give you a shout. It's a series of still cameras, just ordinary stills cameras, and they're arranged in an arc. And if you set them off all together, they take a photograph from their point of view. If you string those photographs together and play it back, you get that effect of moving round something. Hopefully. Well, you pointed up in the air a bit. Or it's all very technical. Or in the case of the bullet sequence, you have a big green screen all the way around, and you have little holes, and you put your camera up to the little hole, and you take your photograph. Now, I'm just keeping half an eye on here so I can find the one. It's actually the lottery commercial. So if you see a guy on a diving board, shout. I can't keep looking at this thing. There's lots of tricks. Everything's a trick, basically. There's always a good trick to do. The time slice stuff has been done freeze frame quite a bit, and that's quite easy to do. That's another giant pullback. It's a bank holiday weekend. The guy moved the damn camera. That's a Chris Cunningham art piece. There you go. It's another giant pullback. She had broken wrists. This is it, right? So if you just rewind very slightly and just play this sequence and then go back to that one again, we'll have a look at it. Right, so it's very brief, but you get the idea. Now, that's could be weeks of work, at least 50 frames there, thousands of pounds. Stop it there. Now, you can see how easy it is to take a photograph and freeze someone like that. Actually, this commercial, half of the time we were freezing people, and half the time they were just standing still. So we just got people to freeze, and people going, how did you manage to get the guy walking through everybody? Well, we just fake it, as usual. The trick with what we do is that we're illusionists. So half the time we might do a trick. I might do the trick at the start before you notice it. And by the time you're looking for the trick gone. And it's, for example, there's a commercial that will come up shortly that we've been quoting on, which I can't say who it's for, but it will have a road that will go from a curvy road, or a straight road, and it will turn into a curvy road, and you'll drive down the road in this new car. And you'd want one too. And anyway, so this curvy road, by the time you get to the curvy road, my plan is that if we do this, I'll make the road straight. I'll fake it to make the road straight. And then we'll take off the warping. By the time you get to the curvy road, people will be going, well, how did they do that? But by then we're just into a normal shot with curvy road. You won't notice it because you won't know to look for it the first time. Now I've told you, you'll all know how it's done, of course. Anyway, back to this. Imagine if the cameras are set off sequentially instead of like this one. We've done quite a few. We did one for HP recently with a guy doing flips upside down and stuff like this. And you could set off the cameras, and they're all controlled by a computer, so you can set the time between the cameras. It's actually quite a scary thing. So they got me in to press the red button in case it went wrong, so I could blame somebody. You know, but you fire it off and you hear all the cameras go around in an arc. You know, it's like, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. The one that Chris did, he used several different techniques, but the basic technique is the same. If you imagine any one camera, you can keep the shutter open for a long period of time, and you get a blur. And so he did that with all the cameras. And so you've got a dog jumping, for example, and the dog is just a series of blurred bits through the frame. And as you move around it, you know, you can see that the dog, you see the dog from different angles, but since all the shutters went off at the same time, it's all one blurred piece. There was another program on TV recently that did the same thing with flying squirrels and stuff, and they put them against backgrounds. You might have seen it, Strange Nature or Weird Nature or something like that. And they did the same thing, but instead they left the shutter open, but they fired a strobe off. So you had like 6 pictures of the flying squirrel or something, and you could move around it in 3D, which is pretty cool. And each one was transparent because they're overlaid with a strobe. So it's called Time Slice, and you can find out lots of stuff about it on the web. And if you go to a website called whatisthematrix.com, probably still there. It shows you how they did that. Now, I got to tell you that I'm bullshitting you a bit, because when it comes out of the camera, it doesn't look like that. When it comes out of the camera, each lens is very slightly different. The camera was a bit wobbly, the film wasn't the same, and so you get this. It looks like the Center Parcs ad, all over the place. We didn't do that one. So what we do is that we then run stabilizing on it. We make sure that every frame is color matched, the contrast color, you know, of RGB, everything about it, and then we probably add in between frames. And there's some very clever programs that add in between frames. Actually, Snow and Wilcox and the BBC. Oops, sorry about that. Blinding everybody. Snow and Wilcox and the BBC invented a thing called Flow-Mo, which plug in 25 frames a second and out comes 50 or 100. And it's used for slowing down athletes and stuff like this, you know, to see them going through the tape and stuff. And it's very clever. But here, if you used it, as we move around, this guy moves against the background. Could you just jog it backwards and forwards a little bit? Right, so you see him move against the background there. Now, to create, go back and freeze it if you can, roughly where you were. If they're not on the naked people. Terribly wrong there. All right, we'll keep talking about it. Anyway, the freeze frame stuff works like, yeah, there we go, perfect. And obviously, if in one frame he moved from there to there, if you could somehow move him against the background and move him half the distance, then you could make an in-between frame. And that's how the interpolation software works. For every pixel, which is 720 across there and 576 down there, for every pixel, it makes a little vector, a 2D vector, to say where that pixel went. And the way it does that is much easier on his trunks than it is anywhere else. It pattern matches, so it looks for a pattern of pixels and how they moved. And once it finds that, it creates all these little vectors, and then you can smooth these vectors, so you can make in between frames. Very clever stuff, and it's also the basis of it. So, and apart from interpolating positions and things, it's the basis of interpolating cameras. You might have Sony and a few other people are working on it with some universities in America on having some fixed cameras, but then being able to interpolate the position. I believe Sky are offering a similar sort of thing for your football. Go and find out. Put yourself in any seat or something.
Didn't they do that in the? I think it was a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They made like a 3D real-time image of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, map it from all the different cameras, and then you can fly around within that virtual image. It's very cool. We'll all be doing it soon, I reckon. Any more questions? Because I'm taking my time over that one, aren't I? Gentleman over there had your hand up, or was that us?
I was just wanted to ask about how effective the technology for the head tracking for accelerometers, wheel movement, things detecting heart rate, anything detecting material or information that you could then use to simulate or to change the
Yeah.
What's the limiting parameters of that head tracker, for instance, against the computing power?
The head tracker gives rotational information only in this particular case, but it's pretty accurate within that. It drifts occasionally, and it's temperature sensitive. So the fact that they put it in a black helmet wasn't great, because when it got in really hot days, the damn thing drifted, and they kept phoning me up. We're in America, and the trackers are drifting. Stick an ice pack on it. That's one piece of technology. There's several other bits of technology that are used within caves and stuff like that. One of the latest ones, one of the best ones, actually uses ultrasonic technology. Funnily enough, it uses bat technology, and you have some transmitters around the room that transmit a signal, and it's just like a GPS. You just dead reckon it from the distance it took from. It knows when the chirp went off in the speaker. It can calculate with the speed of sound how long it took to get there, and presuming actually it's only the differential between how long it took to get from all the speakers, so you don't have to know the air temperature or anything like that. And roughly, but then there's a differential between it. So unless the humidity is going to vary in different places within the room, you're going to be pretty accurate. And I think that's accurate to probably a centimetre or two. There's various other technologies that are quite interesting, though. There's a company in Manchester and one in America who are doing facial tracking and stuff from AI work, and particularly it's called robotic vision techniques. And they've got one where they can track a face in real time and have an actor talking, and literally point a camera at me, and I can talk, and I can drive a 3D computer character within a 25th of a second. It's analysed everything without any markers on your face, and also take all the blinks and the head movements and everything into account. So it's a kind of max headroomy thing, but that's kind of interesting, and we're looking to using that for non-real-time applications, but also real-time applications.
Surely that's the key to developing all of it, being able to make or at least get a computer program to make an educated guess about how to project or how to create an augmented or immersive virtual world.
Absolutely, there's.
Collecting real-time data.
It is.
Where it's at the computer graphics is all of these tricks, all of these techniques are essential for creating either an augmented or immersive world at the front end, but actually having an idea about how you respond to it and what you're going to do to respond back.
Yeah, there's another side of that too. Yeah, don't call me Shirley. No, I'm only kidding. You're right. It's where the interest is. There's another interesting area, is capturing reality. Because what's the point in building this room in computer graphics? You might think this room wouldn't take you long to build. It would. Look at every little detail all around here, every little imperfection. It's imperfections that we can't build easily. You know, we can build a perfect room, but it looks too perfect. So, again, like the Matrix used photographic techniques to capture things and build from that. The problem is that it would be great, but there's no way of accurately measuring what you're looking at. We took some stereo and tried to use the pattern matching techniques to detect Z depth. Okay, to you guys it's probably Y depth, to me it's Z. Z goes in and out from the camera, Y goes up and down, like this is computer graphics versus CAD CAM, but I don't know whether they still do it the other way, but but the depth could be, you can stop that anytime you want. The depths would be, can be calculated, but it's not accurate enough to extract depth information. There is some things that like scan lasers around and look at with parallax. If you look off to one side, you know, you can see as you move a distance away from something, you know, as you come closer, the laser would move to one side or the other, and you can do it like that. But again, it's not very accurate. We want a more accurate way of capturing the environment, and I think that and interacting with stuff are the limitations. The computer graphics side of it and the computing side of it's probably trivial in comparison. Any more? God, you're all in the dark there, yeah.
You've touched on this. In Star Trek, there is a wonderful device called the holodeck.
Holodeck, my perfect toy, actually, yeah.
Which is really what everybody's striving for.
Exactly.
You can only create the illusion of the space, but you can interact with the characters.
That's the difficult bit, isn't it?
Do you think it will ever be possible to do it? Are there ways of creating the illusion already?
Yes, there are. Whether I mean, I've tried something called haptic devices and things like this. There's one that's on an arm that's quite cool to try, and it's a carving tool, and it's like on an arm like this with 2 or 3 degrees of movement, but you can move this thing around, but it has servos that stop it, and it feels like you're pushing over a surface, and they can make different surfaces and stuff. Some interesting, and I'm no expert in any of this, I just happen to read a lot of stuff. My comic is New Scientist. So, they've detected that you can, the effect of you rubbing your finger over a surface can be mimicked. It's basically a series of electrical impulses given off. If you could mimic that on the surface of your fingers, then you could mimic touching velvet, rubber, whatever else. I suspect, like everything else, it'll be driven by the pornography industry. And I'm sorry, but that's the way it goes. That's why VHS won over Betamax. It's what will make video phones sell. It's what made the internet popular, sadly. And there is actually a science called, well, I don't know if it's a science. There's a science called dildonics. And yeah, check it out on the web. There's some very embarrassing suits that you wouldn't want to go and answer the door wearing. But the thing that worries me is that, suppose we get into the complete environment where it is indistinguishable, and we can have a philosophical discussion about this. There was a philosophical discussion as to whether we're already in it. Prove you're not, exactly. But meanwhile, it would have to be some hell of a processing going on, though, and it's still a bit beyond us. So anything that is far enough beyond us is magic. So I think that it will come, but there are a lot of problems to solve before you will ever get to the point where you could be in virtual reality and feel like that you are actually there. The holodeck way of approaching it is as good as any. It might be easier to make a force field than it might be to generate the rest of it. I mean, the holodeck is a physical space. What they always miss out in the holodeck is that it's not an infinite space, and although you can project things that might appear to go on to infinity, you will eventually run into the wall. And they never seem to have this problem, but that would be a problem. It has been a problem in caves, apparently. Caves are, I can't even remember what it stands for, something audio-visual, no doubt. But basically a cave is a series of projectors on translucent screens, back projected usually, to put you in a reality. I saw somebody go, what? Imagine this screen was back projected instead of front projected, and you had a screen like that, but the projector's at the back and it's semi-transparent, so it's made of paper or something. You project. Imagine a room made of paper walls and you project from the other side. If you project stereo and you have shutter glasses on, you would never know that the walls are there, which is exactly why people kept walking into them. Stereo, So the answer was quite clever, I thought. At MIT, I think, have done it. They've sandwiched a curtain of dry ice between 2 airflows and projected onto that, which I think is a pretty cool idea. Bet you it doesn't work well, but it's a cool idea. The holodeck would be absolutely fantastic, but the force field bit is the difficult bit. Out-projected holograms are here. They're just damn expensive. They've been here for 10 years or more. The Obi-Wan Kenobi type projections, and they can be done. Just horrendously expensive to compute, and to be honest, it's not the sort of 3D television you're going to want to watch, is it, really? So, any further questions? Go ahead.
You are like in the edge of technology. I was wondering, yes, you are.
Bleeding edge, maybe.
Okay. Is technology coming to you, or you are the technology?
I'm always looking for new toys.
But are the new toys looking for you?
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, you look through something, you come across somebody comes in with a problem, and you go and look for a problem. But in looking for this, you find other things, and you think, oh, that's interesting. For example, I mean, years ago at Seagraph, I haven't found a use for this one yet, but I saw this strip of material. It's just a long strip, but you bend it, and it only bends in one dimension, in a plane, if you like, in one dimension. But 2 dimensions. But you can actually get the spline and the computer of how the thing is bent. you know, it's 6,000 quid or something. I mean, what are you going to use it for? But I could imagine a use for it if I wanted to do a set that had people sitting down in it, and I built a set that was blue with a sofa that had one of these strips in it. When somebody sat down, the whole thing would distort. Then I could capture that distortion and make the other sofa. So, you know, I looked at this thing and went, oh, that's a cool toy. And sometimes you see these things, and years later something comes along and you go, wow, I remember there's a great gadget that would be good for this. And I think that's, for me, it's a big gain, but don't tell them. I kind of got a perfect job now, and I kind of look at things that are interesting and see if we can make some money out of them as well. But so long as we make money, they seem to be happy. So, anything else? I'm ignoring you guys over here, but you kind of sat off to one side. Anyway, half of you left now, snuck out the door when I wasn't watching. No questions, though? So obviously, I've either explained it really well or you're all ready to go home now. Okay. No comment. All right, I think we've probably come to a natural end then. So thank you very much. See you soon.